Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to share with you guys the results of the Fire Station Efficiency Solutions package today. I'm Abby Francisco, and we have about an hour today of time. The first around 10 minutes will be dedicated to just introductions. Who is Southface, and what is the Advanced Commercial Buildings Initiative, which is the grant to help make the solutions package possible. Then for about 30 to 40 minutes, we'll be getting into the details of the actual solutions package and what it entails. And then the last 10 minutes or so will be dedicated to questions. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter them into the webinar prompt, and we'll be sure to cover them at the end. In addition, be keeping a lookout for trivia questions throughout the webinar, as we'll be going through them. Going through a few during the course of this presentation. To give an overview of who I am Abby Francisco. I'm a project engineer here at Southface. I've been here for a little bit more than 3 years working on energy and water assessments at small commercial buildings and homes, as well as participating in some research, monitoring, and data analysis. To give you an overview of who Southface is, we are a nonprofit located in the Atlanta area. We have been around since 1978, and our vision is to make homes, communities, and workplaces more sustainable through what we'd like to call our 4 pillars, which are education, research, advocacy, and technical assistance. So the picture up here on the screen is actually a picture of our main campus, and on the left, the building that looks more residential is what we like to call the Resource Center, and that was built in 1996 through a partnership with the City of Atlanta during the Summer Olympics to design and build a residential home demonstration workspace. And then on the right, where you see the building that looks a little bit more commercial, is what we call the Eco Office. It was made in 2009, and it's a 3-story commercial research and demonstration facility where we have different energy-efficient technologies throughout, passive design strategies, as well as a green roof located on the top of the building. We also have the Suite Center located right next door to the main campus, and this is called the Southeast Weatherization and Energy Efficiency Training Center. And this is an adaptive reuse project built in 2010 and serves as a regional green building training facility, which has trained over more than 3,000 building professionals to date. Diving into our learning objectives for today, we're going to be covering a good amount of material, starting with energy benchmarking, so learning how to go about benchmarking your buildings and why that's important. Next, we'll be discussing how to go about saving 20% energy in existing fire station building types. Following that, we'll be discussing low-cost and quick payback measures that y'all can begin implementing today. And finally, we'll go over just other considerations that we've gathered throughout the assessment of these fire stations in Atlanta. And just for your information, this webinar does qualify for continuing education credits. It qualifies for 1 hour of BPI, ICC, and AIA, and GBCI is still pending. So if you would like to get credits for this webinar, reach out to courses@southface.org, and that will get you set to get credit for those. All right, first we'll dive into a trivia question before talking about ACBI, the Advanced Commercial Buildings Initiative. And ACBI is a grant that covers small commercial buildings which are 50,000 square feet or less. So of the total U.S. commercial building stock, what do you think is the percentage that represents buildings that are 50,000 square feet or less? Give you guys about 15 seconds or so. All right. We'll share your results, And so it looks like most of you said that that buildings 50,000 square feet or less represent greater than 90% of the building stock, which is correct. As we can see in the data here, the bar graph on the left shows that 94% of the commercial buildings in the U.S. building stock qualify as small commercial, or 50,000 square feet or less. And we can also see that on the bar on the right, that the percentage of total floor space that these small commercial buildings represent is about half the commercial floor space. And looking into how that correlates to energy consumption, it's about a little less than half of energy consumption is consumed by small commercial buildings of the total U.S. commercial building stock. So historically, large buildings have almost always been the primary targets of energy and water saving efforts, while these smaller buildings have somewhat fallen through the cracks. And so the way we see it, this is a missed opportunity in energy management. And through the Advanced Commercial Buildings Initiative, we aim to create tools to make the market for small commercial energy and water efficiency more accessible to the industry. And that leads us into the Advanced Commercial Buildings Initiative, which is ACBI. It's a 3-year program that focuses on small commercial buildings, which is 50,000 square feet or less. And through this program, we have utilized various existing programs here at Southface to research dozens of buildings, collect data on them, and identify simple and common sense solutions to resource efficiency to make this efficiency more available to small commercial building owners and operators. And the overall structure of ACBI is 3 different phases. It's the research phase, the demonstration phase, and finally the deployment phase. So we are currently in the deployment phase right now, the final stage, where we are doing outreach to share the different resources that we have created throughout this grant process. And speaking of the different resources that we've been creating, here is just a slide dedicated to the few of what we've made. So anything from tools to help you do self-assessment building audits, to using utilities and savings calculators to determine the finances of your next planned retrofit, to approaches to combustion safety or building envelope testing. And these toolkits apply to single buildings or across a portfolio of buildings, as well as specific to different types of buildings. So we've done detailed assessing of recreation centers as well as fire stations, which the fire stations will be covering today. If you want to learn more about rec centers, we will also have a webinar posted on our website. But all these tools and resources can be found at www.southface.org/programs/ACBI. And the energy efficiency solutions package for fire stations that we'll be talking about today is still in the final stages of review, and that will be ready in the coming weeks and accessible at the same page. So we'll be sure to reach out to you guys when the final version is available. All right, so moving into the fire station efficiency solutions package. What this aims to do is equip municipalities and fire departments with the tools to reduce energy use by 20%, so that municipalities and cities around the country can lower their utility bills, reduce their carbon footprints, and make their buildings more resilient. So this whole toolkit is based on engagement with the City of Atlanta, who partnered with Southface through the Advanced Commercial Buildings Initiative. And the City of Atlanta identified fire stations as a building type to do research on and figure out the best ways for energy efficiency. And the first about this research process was to try to understand the energy portfolio of a fire station. So in order to do this, we first benchmarked the entire selection, all 35 stations within the Atlanta fire station portfolio. And after that, these stations select stations were assessed through ASHRAE Level 2 audits as well as detailed circuit level energy monitoring, air leakage performance testing, and creating energy models. And so the findings from this research were used in the later stages in the grant in conjunction with some planned fire station upgrades around the city. And so the research supported some upgrade selection and implementation. And the findings from anything from the assessments to implementation were incorporated into the solutions package, which is what we're going to be going over today. And first, just going right into the barriers, these were some of the barriers to energy efficiency in fire stations that were identified towards the beginning and was something that we were aiming to address. First, something really common across many cities is just limited access to funding for implementing these measures. Next was a lack of clear pathway to meet these efficiency goals, so how to go about meeting the sustainability goals that you're setting to set forth. In addition, just utility data accuracy and having a verification process for that, and how to go about making sure that your utility tracking is correct. And lastly, just overall training around energy efficiency best practices and how to gain the best knowledge regarding different situations in your building and how to go about increasing its efficiency. And so this toolkit or solutions package aims to address the last three barriers mentioned on this list. Okay, and so moving right into the structure of the toolkit, its overall intent is to be an interactive document with links to different resources, specifications, guidelines, or materials where one can dive deeper where desired. And the overall goal here was to take a broad overview of our findings and then allow different users to dive deeper from different angles where they see fit. And the structure of the remaining of this presentation will follow the structure of the document. And so it starts out with benchmarking. Next, we'll go over fire station characteristics. Afterwards, we'll discuss the pathway to 20% energy savings. After that, we'll look at low cost and quick payback measures. And finally, we'll discuss other considerations to keep in mind. And first, we'll be looking at benchmarking and talking about what is benchmarking, why is it important, and how to go about actually doing it. So benchmarking helps answer the questions such as how energy intensive is my building and how does its energy use compare to other buildings. So it's essentially, benchmarking entails tracking the energy use of your building and then using other data sources to compare your building's energy use to other similar buildings to determine if it's performing better than average, worse than average, what is its potential for energy improvement. And a couple of reasons why someone would go about benchmarking a portfolio of buildings is first to begin tracking your energy consumption. So what we like to say at Southface is you can't manage until you're measuring. And what benchmarking can do is help you set up a process for systematically tracking a portfolio of buildings' energy consumption so that you can begin to set goals and then identify targets, efficiency targets later down the road, as well as just meeting city benchmarking requirements which have come up across the U.S., including Atlanta. In addition to this, benchmarking can help you prioritize upgrades. So with a limited set of funding that many cities have, it's best to prioritize upgrades based on which buildings have the best potential for reducing their energy use and targeting those high energy users typically. And benchmarking provides you the means to be able to make those types of informed decisions. Lastly, another benefit of benchmarking was that it simply helps identify unused or failing meters, and so you can correct those in your documentation and be more informed about just which meters belong to which buildings. And so here in the slide, I have a picture of 2 fire stations in the city of Atlanta, one built in 1925 and one built in 2010. And this is just here to show an example that one might suspect, or one might think that the 1925, the older station, is the station to retrofit because it's probably less efficient and consumes more energy. And but this next slide is just, it's something kind of fun if you like to get nerdy with graphs, or something that you can create from benchmarking. And what we found with the city of Atlanta, which is common for a lot of buildings elsewhere, is that the year of construction for a fire station actually didn't have any correlation with how much energy it consumed. So by tracking your building's energy consumption, you can make more informed decisions about where upgrades are needed. And next, we'll dive into our second trivia question. And so the previous graph, what we looked at was building energy use intensity. And this question includes which 2 metrics are required to calculate a building's energy use intensity. And we'll give you guys another 15, 20 seconds or so. All right. Good work. Well, it looks like most of you guys answered the correct answer, which is A, building area and 12 months of utility data. And here's a slide that just goes just represents those area or those metrics. So what you need to calculate energy use intensity, which is a really common metric to use for benchmarking your building, is simply the building area and 12 months of utility data. And a really common tool to use for benchmarking is Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is a free online accessible tool that allows you to compare your building's performance to other buildings and just provides a framework for being able to track energy consumption across a portfolio of buildings, download reports, and make your data more accessible, as well as just being able to easily see trends and spot spikes online. And this last graph just shows the results of benchmarking the City of Atlanta's fire station data. So this bar graph chart, each bar represents a different station, and you can see there's a pretty big spread of how much energy is being consumed. And we're looking again at the energy use intensity, which you guys can dive into deeper online, but basically the higher the number, the more energy intensive it is. And the black dotted line here represents the U.S. national average fire station energy intensity around 150 kBTUs per square foot. And you can see that 5 of the bars are colored in orange. And what that is referring to is the stations with planned renovations in the near future. And so all 5 of these stations are consuming more than the national average fire station and will likely greatly benefit from efficiency upgrades. Lastly, with benchmarking lessons learned, going back to one of the barriers we defined in the beginning with data accuracy and data verification, one of the deliverables that we created in this solutions package is a protocol for verifying utility data that's inputted into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So something that we found was that a lot of times there would be data inaccuracies, and this protocol allows users to have a systematic way to going about checking and verifying the data using best practices. Okay, moving on to fire station characteristics. So fire stations are actually pretty interesting buildings. They're fairly small. The average City of Atlanta fire station is 8,000 square feet, and they're simultaneously used as a workplace with an office, a community space where people from the neighborhood can come in, and also a home for the fire station men and women who work there. So it has a lot of uses going on in the station, and it's very heavily used. It's occupied 365 days a year. 24/7. So one of the questions we had when starting the research phase was, where actually is energy and water being used in the building? And we performed ASHRAE Level 2 audits of 10 of the stations, as well as did some more detailed monitoring and modeling of a few of the stations. And to help answer this question of, what are the biggest consumers in a fire station, in a typical fire station, and what does that look like? That leads us to our next trivia question, which, before we dive into the answers, we'd like to hear what do you guys think? Which energy end use do you think consumes the greatest amount of energy in a typical fire station? Awesome. All right. It looks like 73% of you guys said heating and cooling, which is the correct answer. So heating and cooling represents, of the source energy use, heating and cooling represents about 40% of that. And so typical heating and cooling systems that we saw in fire stations consisted of constant volume, either residential split systems or commercial package units, and these were typically just controlled with a standard thermostat, not programmable. And the equipment had around code minimum SEER 13 efficiencies, or maybe a little less if the station was older. The next highest end use was interior lighting, which represented 29% of the total energy use. And so typical lighting that we saw in a station was either T12 or T8 linear fluorescence, and then usually a combination of CFLs and incandescent screw-ins inside the building. And these were all controlled with just manual toggle switches. We didn't notice any occupancy sensors throughout. The next highest user is interior equipment, and that is basically all your plug loads plus your refrigeration equipment. So typically we saw 3 residential pieces of equipment in the fire station, residential refrigerators in the fire stations, one for each of the shifts, as well as an ice maker and a washer, commercial washer and dryer, as well as other appliances and plug loads. The smallest consumers was exterior lighting at 5%, and that mainly consisted of metal halides, either controlled by switches or photocells, but a lot of times the photocells were not operating correctly. And finally, the water heating was also the smallest at around 5%, which hot water is consumed at the faucets, at the showers, and then at the clothes washer. Looking at the water use breakout, which was somewhat surprising, at least to me, in the beginning, was that fire stations actually have a really heavy water use intensity, and about 30% of that is going to plumbing fixtures, and the remaining 70% on average was going to truck plus other. So plumbing fixtures as your typical toilets, urinals, faucets, and shower heads, and then truck plus other consists of water used to clean the truck on a daily basis, as well as refilling a tank in the truck, which was frequently had leaks in it, as well as just other leaks throughout the building. So what can we gather from this information learned about fire station characteristics? So one of the most important things we learned was just about the heavy use of the fire stations and the importance of investing in high-quality, durable equipment from the beginning will allow for many, many savings in the long run, as well as save time in terms of maintenance. And anything from pretty much any heavily used appliance or even light switches should be high grade and high quality. In addition, while the fire stations have similar uses and sometimes similar building construction, engagement with the fire station men and women to understand the particular needs of the building is really important to make smart and long-lasting changes and efficiency upgrades inside the building to make sure that they work for the occupants. And lastly, what this picture basically is describing is viewing the building as a complex system is really important. So understanding the interaction between the building and the occupants and the environment and what that means for health and moisture. For example, how air sealing can not only impact energy but also impact indoor air quality and comfort of the occupants. It's important to understand those different interactions to get the most out of your improvements of the building. And so what we've made as part of the solutions package is there's a link to a fact sheet overviewing the building as a system and best practices with that so that you'll be able to apply those lessons learned to fire station upgrades. And moving on to the pathway to 20% energy savings. So we've gone over how to benchmark a building, how to track where it's performing at and its potential for improvement, and we also went over the different fire station characteristics and things to keep in mind during the design process. And when trying to determine the pathway to 20% energy savings, we needed to prioritize which measures to do, taking into account all these different factors going on, with the goal of outputting a simple and prescriptive or common sense way that municipalities can easily pick up and apply to their fire stations to know what are the best ways that we can save energy at our existing fire stations. So before we dive into the results of that, we have our next trivia question, which is, which energy efficiency measure do you think has the highest potential for energy savings at a fire station? All right. So interestingly, and I'll just share the results for this, the most picked one was building envelope improvements, and then LED lighting and high efficiency HVAC equipment came in second. So I'll show you our results table and then kind of explain our thoughts behind it. So what we found to be the highest potential for energy savings in terms of kBTUs per foot squared of source energy was LED lighting and controls. Next in line was about half potential for savings for high efficiency HVAC units. That's followed by radiant bay heaters, next Energy Star appliances, then the pilotless range, and finally the high efficiency water heater. And so regarding building envelope improvements, which definitely throughout our surveys we saw a lot of opportunity for that, it really varied by the station construction type, and it just really varied by station. And so in terms of this prescriptive path, the energy savings were so variable that it wasn't included in this, but we do in the solutions package provide itemized detailed specifications for how to go about tightening your building envelope in a fire station, and some common places that we saw air leakage in stations. And so now you know some of the projects that can result in the top savings, but we already pretty much know this. We know that LED lighting can result in very high energy savings. We know that, improving the efficiency of your equipment is good, but one of the barriers to achieving these energy savings was the implementation of these measures. So how do we go about making sure that the LED lighting and controls are installed correctly, and same with the HVAC systems, and making sure that best practices are utilized throughout these different measures. So as part of the solutions package, we've created some more detailed specifications within the pathway to 20% energy savings. So for example, for the LED lighting and controls project, we specify what you'll need in terms of efficiency levels or different relevant rating systems to be looking out for when specifying equipment, as well as what control settings should be or other best practices for that project. And so you'll be able to refer to those in those detailed specifications by project. And within those specs, we also include projects for building envelope improvements, low flow water fixtures, and kitchen exhaust fans. And now we'll just go pretty quickly through the low cost and quick payback measures identified. So these were things that weren't included in the prescriptive pathway, but they were either because they were such a low cost or such a quick payback that they should be implemented at all stations pretty much immediately. And so this is just a glimpse of some of the main ones, but more are included in the solutions package. So first, converting all electric dryers to gas dryers, and this applies to buildings that have gas service to the building. But we know that these laundry equipment is used very heavily at these stations. It's used on a daily basis, and gas dryers are much more efficient than electric dryers. And so converting them, all the commercial dryers, to gas will certainly save you on energy and definitely energy costs. Next, removing vending machines, or at least installing a vendimizer. So in some of our circuit level monitoring in the research phase, we found in one particular building a vending machine costing more than $1,000 per year in terms of energy costs. So you could essentially buy soft drinks and give them out to the people in the building at a less cost than maintaining that vending machine, and that's without the cost to actually rent the vending machine. So we really recommend just unplugging those and removing them, and if you absolutely need them in your building, install a vendimizer on them. And so what the vendimizer does is basically limit the compressor energy use to when it's occupied, and as well as limit the light usage when it's occupied with a just simple occupancy sensor. And those are fairly cheap, under around $100, $200. Next on the list was installing low-flow faucet and shower aerators. So those guidelines are provided in more detailed specifications in the document, but just applying those to all the bathroom faucets and shower aerators are a quick way to save on water, which is really helpful in the city of Atlanta, where water costs are the highest in the nation. Repairing exterior lighting photocells. So a lot of times those just aren't working correctly, and simply taking note of buildings where the exterior lights are on during the day, and repairing those photocells so those high-power metal halides are only operating when necessary. And then finally, simply paying attention when you're doing a site visit to a building and walking around, looking for unused and unnecessary equipment. We found a space heater to be an electric space heater in the wall, and you can easily forget about those. They'll just have a little knob on them, but we found one through our circuit level monitoring that was turning on and off in the middle of September, which if you're in Atlanta now, you definitely know you don't want an electric space heater operating in your building because it's still pretty hot outside. And then finally, just paying attention and fixing water leaks early, which benchmarking and keeping track of your utility data can help identify those leaks easier. And finally, we'll be looking at other considerations for fire stations. So in the toolkit, we identify a couple other things to pay attention to during your upgrades, including your building envelope, your kitchen exhaust, and your combustion safety. So within the building envelope, we saw a lot of opportunities, and again, it varied from station to station, but a lot of opportunities from air sealing between the indoors and the outdoors, but also air sealing between the bay area and the living spaces. And because the bay area is where the fire trucks are stored and it's susceptible to a lot of truck exhaust fumes, making sure that that area is air sealed tight from the rest of the living space will help promote better, healthy indoor air quality where the fire station men and women are living indoors, as well as helping to save energy and losses throughout the building. Taking a look at kitchen exhaust, we did run into some barriers there in terms of making sure that your exhaust fan is sized correctly, given that most stations are making 3 meals a day. It's a pretty heavily used system. So making sure that you're providing proper exhaust and makeup air where applicable, but also not overdoing it. So you're not penalizing yourself majorly in terms of energy and also keeping the building comfortable. And combustion safety was another issue that we found to come up a lot. And so especially in these stations with just code minimum gas-fired furnaces or water heaters, making sure that they are located in the right areas within the building envelope to ensure that best practices are used for combustion safety. And so as part of the solutions package, we have a link to a small commercial combustion appliance guideline where you can, if you'd like to dive deeper, you can refer to it to understand a little bit more in detail about combustion safety. And then finally, we looked on the policy side. So we worked in collaboration with the City of Atlanta and their Office of Sustainability to try to not only realize efficiency gains from specified efficiencies of equipment, but also making sure that we're aligning with the different goals and missions of departments. And so something that we began to understand was that energy and water efficiency strategies must be explicitly tied to a department's mission, captured by its procedures, and supported by the leadership to be effective in the long term. And so making sure that your departmental goals are aligned with municipality, sustainability, and resiliency goals. And a procurement policy implemented at the municipal level can really help standardize efficiency and upgrade specifications across departments. But we also realize, on the other hand, that operations and maintenance procedures are typically defined at the department level. So operations and maintenance should incorporate energy and water efficiency standards into their procurement policy and be regularly reviewed and updated to reflect best practices. And lastly, greater consistency across your equipment in the building portfolio. It can help reduce your energy costs by specifying higher efficiency equipment, but it can also help reduce overall operations and maintenance expenses by reducing requirements for stocking parts, as well as increasing your technicians' expertise within servicing specified pieces of equipment. Even more, the incremental cost of installing above-code equipment typically pays back within the life of the equipment. So if you're planning on upgrading your HVAC system anyway, because it's reached its end of useful life, typically pays back to put in a high efficiency piece of equipment when you're already going to put forth the money to replace it to begin with. And so that covers what the fire station solutions efficiency package entails. This slide shows you some links to some different resources for ACBI and the different toolkits that I've mentioned throughout. In addition, ACBI offers free calculators that right now are in their beta phase that can be found in this link above. So if you are looking to upgrade a piece of equipment and want to know, around what type of savings you'll be looking at, or if you are planning on adding insulation to your roof or walls and want to see your potential for savings, these calculators can be used to help inform those decisions. And again, I just want to thank you guys for joining us today to talk about the Fire Station Efficiency Solutions Package. It's been a pleasure presenting it to y'all. My name is Abby Francisco. You can feel free to reach me at the contact information on the screen.